What food did you hate the most as a child? Sprouts. Every time I ate them. They had been boiled to death so you could squash them with your tongue. It was genuinely disgusting. And then, every Christmas, we had them with our special Christmas lunch at school, and were ordered to eat at least one, as if they were good for us. No, they aren't good for us. You threw away all the goodness when you strained them from the boiling water. Thankfully, I can cook sprouts properly now. They just need to be heated up, and that's it. Whether by just bringing them to the boil or frying them off from raw until the Maillard reaction takes place. Kidneys, my goodness, they tasted horrendous. When you consider what they do in a human, or in this case a cow's body, you understand why. Organ meat is quite nutritious compared to other cuts of beef. It was demonized because of the high cholesterol it contained. But studies show cholesterol in the meats we eat does not absorb into our system in that way. So organ meat is really good for you. That said, I will never eat another kidney as long as I live. I do love liver though. Lasagna. Don't get me wrong. It was good. But having it every week as leftovers was kind of not good. We had it most weekends. And then we had on Sunday as leftovers. And then we had it on Monday. If we were still hungry. It's Wednesday. How about we have Stoffer's lasagna again? It was my dad's favorite. So every other weekend we went over there. We had it. As a child, I didn't like spinach. But that's because I never had it cooked properly until I was much older. Onions, still hate them. People put them in fucking everything and I omit that fact or lie about it. My family was the worst. Raw. Nasty onions in potato salad. Coleslaw. Ground beef for tacos. Fried taters. Tuna casserole, etc. Onions in everything. They wondered why I was skinny my entire life until I lived on my own. It's because I couldn't eat. I'm 5'10" and weighed only 140-ish until college. I'm a beefy 200 pounds now, because I can actually eat food now. Vegetables, all of them. My mum was an okay cook. Unless it was vegetables. They were always overcooked and mushy. Carrots, parsnips, broccoli. The smell that comes from overcooked veg still haunts me. I thought new potatoes only came out of a tin until I left home. Thankfully, I married a better cook and like most vegetables now. It took a long time though. Still, if my mum was to ask us round for a roast on Sunday, she put the veg on now. Nothing. That and onions with gravy and mashed potatoes. I never gave my mother a problem. Whatever she put before me, I was more than grateful to get, and it was always something great, and it always tasted so good. Well, because I have a palate that enjoys foods from around the world, different spices. I just don't like anything that you eat, and suddenly your mouth and your stomach are on fire. That's too hot for me. I have no idea what its name was. My grandmother on my mother's side found a recipe in a magazine. Those sounded good. She made it once. I was 5 or 6 at the time. 30 for now. But no one could eat it since it tasted so horrible. One in the family remembers what the food was called. But from that point forward, whenever she and my grandfather invited the rest of the family over for dinner, we jokingly asked if it was said food. Liver and onions. Black licorice. Canned vegetables and white menudo pozole. There was a high chance of the white menudo being served after church on Sundays. Pozole was another one I couldn't stand. I found out recently that it was that particular cook's recipes that were the problem. I still can't eat white menudo. It was too traumatizing. But I'd had another cook's pozole and found out why I had been missing. Beans of any kind and liver. A light in forcing me to eat them. And since kids weren't allowed to say or indicate in any way that we didn't like something or we would get seconds, we learned to swallow the bites whole while smiling. Dad would laugh and say, "That's good, isn't it?" Just one of many reasons we all went no contact with him. An evil stepmother. I'm not sad they're both dead. Unpopular opinion. But stuffing, every holiday I would be forced to sit at the table until my meal was finished. And every time I had stuffing on my plate, I would vomit. The texture was weird and the seasonings were too much for me as a child. I would have to come back to the table and finish even if I was sick. So still to this day I'm a bit off of it. But now bake it so it's crunchy, so have started to like it now. Brussels sprouts. I was made to sit in a dark kitchen with my cold Brussels sprouts because my father was so enraged that I didn't like them. I sat there for a couple of hours and his GF finally let me go get ready for bed. I tried them again as an adult. My sister made them with horseradish and bacon. But it's the Brussels sprouts. They're bitter and nasty, and they suck. I also hate the taste and texture of eggplant. Born in Essie, Louisiana, it was red beans and rice. My dad said that I wouldn't grow up to be pretty if I didn't eat them, and we had red beans every Monday. So I'd take them like a pill covered in ketchup. One day, in my early 20s, I was helping a group dig a drainage ditch. The only thing to eat for lunch was red beans, and I was starving. Turns out I do love red beans, I just don't like my dad's recipe. Coleslaw. My mom would make it as a side maybe once every few months. My parents were strict about eating vegetables. Had to finish all the healthy stuff on the plate before we could leave the table. It came to the point that I just had it literally floating in hot sauce one night, so I could choke it down. They still make fun of me for it. I still hate coleslaw. Most vegetables, since my mom would always buy frozen or canned, and then just boil them and add salt and butter. The worst experience, though, was at my aunt's house where she made some kind of baked zucchini that was stuffed with American cheese. I was forced to eat the whole zucchinis and ended up barfing on the last bite. She said I was being dramatic. Salmon patties. As an adult, I adore salmon. They be one of my top 5 foods, but the only way my mum ever cooked it was as fried salmon patties, and my memories make me cringe. Dry on the insides and most coating grease on the inside. And my mum is a fabulous southern lady in the kitchen. Literally everything else she cooks is mouth-watering. It's a conundrum. Potatoes. Probably because the only way my mother ever served them was plain boiled. No salt or seasoning. Usually dry as hell. I can tolerate certain potatoes now. Enough sauce, gravy, and I might actually enjoy them. But I'll never understand why people are so obsessed with them when there are so many other starches, carbs that are so much better. I think I'm one of the least picky eaters I know. I don't dislike anything I've had. Sure. Some things I didn't like as much as others. I used to be very picky as a kid, but now I like all the food. I hated Brussels sprouts as a kid because my mum never used any seasoning. It wasn't the Brussels I hated, it was the lack of cooking them properly. Any vegetable. My wife recently grew some carrot seeds in a bucket for an experiment. There was just enough for a single meal, and the taste was so strong it took me back to when I was a kid and hated them. I don't normally mind carrots, and it made me realize just how much difference GM has made. Either for the good or bad. I'm not sure which. Turnips. Memory fails of how my mother cooked them. And she was an outstanding cook. But my God, they tasted like something poisonous. I think she figured out early on that it was not a popular dish because they disappeared when I was still really young. Maybe I should try them again. Now, decades later. For some reason I hated watermelon and hated eating fish. Whenever we'd camp as a family, I loved catching and cleaning the fish. Then I'd give it to someone else to eat. I later lived in Japan for 2 years, so had to change my feelings on that last one. Now I enjoy eating fish. I literally ate everything as a child. I wasn't picky or fussy, except beets in a can. The smell and texture still make me nauseous. Also, the only food I was ever forced to eat as a child was a glass of milk. Even to this day, I cannot drink a glass of milk. I get a gag reflex. Spaghetti. Absolutely dreaded hearing that we were having spaghetti for supper. Even the smell of it was enough to make me feel sick. The smell of the noodles boiling in the water so gross. We grew up poor and alternated between pork chops and spaghetti every night. I hated beef as a kid, particularly beef burger patties. Every time my dad would take my brother and me to McDonald's, I'd order big and tasty, but take the patty off and replace it with fries lol. I didn't start like burgers beef until many years later. As a child I enjoy almost everything, but if it contained raisins or pickles I'd get grossed out. I'd enjoyed those separately out the container, but if it was inside food it just felt gross. I'd pick out the bits and leave it on the side of the plate. Lasagna because of the smell. I always grew up in small houses, so whenever someone cooks something with a strong smell the entire house would smell of it. Therefore the smell of fettups, I mean cheese, would linger through the house for hours. I grew up in Turkey, and eggplant puree is common. I would sometimes confuse it for mashed potatoes, and just you gag. I love it now. Lamb chops are common there as well, and I just couldn't do the fat. Love lamb now, but it still needs to be lean. Zucchini, my mum used to cook them often. Always the same to recipes, which I hated both. Now as an adult I know about a dozen other recipes and love zucchini. The main point of them, which my mum never got, is do not overcook them too much. Hot dogs. I hate the taste, the texture, the smell. Everything. At a classmate's birthday party in 1985, we were served hot dogs. I dutifully bit into mine and looked into it. It grossed me out so much that I haven't eaten one since that day. Liver. Tastes awful, and I don't chitchook, so why would I like that horrifying texture? Eggs. Seafood. I can see it caught, gutted and immediately cooked, and it will still smell like it's been on a Phoenix sidewalk in July for 3 hours.